Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at a really key area, the global market for medical imaging information systems. MIS.
Right, and specifically how things looked back in 2025.
Exactly. We're using a comprehensive global market report from Cognitive Market Research as our guide here.
hmm Yeah.
Solid source.
And our mission really is to pull out the key insights, the big numbers, to give you a clear and digestible picture of
Yeah.
where this market stood and where it was heading.
And it's a big picture. Just to kick things off, that global MIS market. It was projected at USD 43,521.6 million in 2025.
43 billion.
Yeah.
That's massive. Okay, so let's unpack that. What does that number really tell us?
Well, what's really compelling isn't just that snapshot in 2025, it's the trajectory. The report indicated some serious expansion was expected.
Right, how much expansion are we talking?
Forecasted to hit USD 66,792.0 million by 2033. So quite a jump.
Almost 67 billion by 2033. Okay, and the speed of that growth is key, right? There's a specific rate mentioned. Yep, the compound annual growth rate, CAGR, it was pegged at 5.5% for the period 2025 to 2033.
Okay, 5.5%. And just quickly, for anyone not totally familiar, CIGR is like the average annual growth if it were smooth and steady over those years?
Exactly. Just gives you a better sense of the overall trend than, looking at potentially bumpy year-to-year changes, a steady 5.5% average yearly growth.
Got it. So what's driving that 5.5% growth? What were the main engines here?
The report really highlights one major factor, the rising prevalence of chronic illnesses across the globe.
Ah, okay.
Think about it, conditions like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. They often need regular monitoring, diagnosis, lots of imaging.
Right, so more scans mean more need for the systems, the MIS, to manage all that data or the images.
Precisely. The demand for the infrastructure grows right alongside the need for imaging itself.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's get geographical. How did this massive market break down across the world in 2025?
Well, North America was definitely the leader of the pack. It held the biggest slice, over 40% of the global revenue.
Over 40%. Wow.
Yeah, their market size in 2025 was USD 16,102.99 million. So just over $16 billion.
Okay. That likely reflects what? Mature healthcare systems, quick adoption of tech.
Exactly. High spending, good infrastructure, tendency to adopt new medical tech readily. All those factors play in.
So 16 billion in North America. What was their growth looking like going forward from 2025?
Their projected CAGR through 2033 was steady, but maybe a bit more moderate than the global average, 4.0%.
Okay, 4%. And within North America, the U.S. is usually the giant there.
Absolutely. The U.S. accounted for the bulk of it, USD 12,705.26 million in 2025. Its CAGR was projected slightly lower at 3.5%.
Why lower? Just because they're already so developed.
That seems to be the reasoning. The report attributes it to already high adoption rates of medical imaging tech. Less room for explosive growth, perhaps.
Right, makes sense. What about Canada and Mexico? Quickly touch on those.
Sure. Canada was estimated at about USD 1.9 billion in 2025, with a bit higher CAGR, 4.8%, possibly linked to their healthcare spending levels. And Mexico, around USD 1.47 billion in 2025, looking at a 4.5% CAGR. So solid growth there, too.
Okay, so North America leads steady growth. Who's number two? Europe.
Yep, Europe. Second largest market share in 2025. They accounted for just over 30% of global revenue.
30%. And the value?
USD 12,621.26 million, so over 12.6 billion. Their projected CGR was 4.6% from 2025 to 2033.
Slightly higher than North America's overall rate. Any specific countries driving that in Europe?
Definitely. The UK stood out, had a market size of about USD 2.1 billion in 2025, but a strong projected CGR of 5.4%.
Higher than the European average. Why is that?
Germany was actually slightly larger in market size in 2025, almost USD 2.5 billion, with a 4.8% CEGR, likely due to strong demand for healthcare equipment generally.
Makes sense. Any others mentioned? France, Italy?
Yeah, briefly. France was looking at a 3.8% CAGR, Italy 4.0%, and Russia was projected at 3.6%. So, growth across the board, but some variation.
Okay. So North America and Europe are the current heavyweights. But you mentioned trajectory earlier. Where was the fastest growth happening?
That would be the Asia-Pacific region, APAC.
Yeah.
They held about 23% of the global revenue in 2025, which translates to USD 10,445.18 million, so over 10 billion.
Still substantial, but the growth.
That's what really gets interesting. Their projected CGR from 2025 to 2033 was the highest globally, a really impressive 8.2%.
Wow, 8.2%. That's significantly higher than North America or Europe. That really points to a shift.
It absolutely does. It reflects things like increasing investment in healthcare infrastructure, a growing middle class, better access to advanced medical services. It's a dynamic region.
Where specifically in APAC was this boom expected? Which countries?
Well, India really stood out. Projected CGR of 10.1%. Just
Okay.
massive growth.
Centers-
Yeah. Singapore also strong at 8.5%, and Southeast Asia as a whole looking at 9.0%.
And China. Huge market.
China, despite already being quite large, about USD 4.4 billion market size in 2025, was still projected to grow at a very healthy 7.7%.
Okay, APAC is definitely the region to watch for growth then. What about the other areas? South America?
South America held a smaller share, naturally, a bit over 5% of global revenue in 2025. That was about USD 1.65 billion.
And their growth.
Pretty solid, actually. A projected CAGR of 6.2% through 2033.
Better than North America or Europe's average. Any standouts?
Brazil was notable. Largest market there, around USD 708 million in 2025, and a strong 6.8% projected CAGR. The report linked that to demand for earlier disease diagnosis.
Okay. And the Middle East and Africa, smaller markets still, I assume?
Yes, relatively smaller shares. The Middle East was around 2% of global revenue, about USD 1.74 billion in 2025. But interestingly, a high projected CGR of 6.8%.
Same as Brazil. Why so high?
Again, linked to rising healthcare investment and particularly the increase in chronic disease prevalence in the region.
Right, that theme again. And Africa.
Africa held around 1% of global revenue, just under $1 billion. USD 957.48 million in 2025. Projected CGR was 5.8%.
Still growing faster than the established markets.
Yeah, and the report mentioned technological advancements playing a role, specifically citing Nigeria with a 6.0% CAGR potential.
Fascinating. So a clear picture. Established leaders, but faster growth in developing regions, especially APAC. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The report also segmented the market within MIS, right? Like by the type of imaging.
Exactly, by modality. And in 2025, MRI magnetic resonance imaging held the largest market share within the different modalities.
Why MRI?
Well, it's incredibly versatile. Great for detailed images of soft tissues, organs, the brain, and there are constant advancements like diffusion tensor imaging for mapping brain connections or functional imaging showing brain activity. Its applications keep expanding.
Makes sense. Incredible detail. But wasn't there another modality highlighted for fastest growth?
Yes, that was computed tomography, or CT. It was projected to have the fastest NEGR over the forecast period.
Okay, why CT?
CT uses X-rays for cross-sectional images. Gives really high-resolution views, crucial for diagnosing lots of conditions, big surgeries. Plus, there's significant R&D investment pouring into CT tech, which is pushing its capabilities and adoption.
Interesting contrast, MRI largest, CT growing fastest. Now, what about the software side of MIS?
Right, the systems themselves. Yeah. In terms of software type, PCS held the biggest share in 2025.
PCS, that's Picture Archiving and Communication System.
That's the one. Think of it as the central digital library for all medical images. It digitizes everything, centralizes it, makes images easily accessible for doctors, specialists, improves collaboration, speeds things up for patients. It's fundamental now.
So the digital backbone. Any other key software types growing quickly?
Yes, RIS Radiology Information Systems. That segment was noted for rapid expansion.
And RAS handles.
It's more the administrative and workflow side for radiology. Scheduling, patient tracking, reports, billing, all that stuff. As hospitals and clinics push for more efficiency, good RIS becomes really vital.
Got it. PCS for images, RIS for workflow. Okay, last segmentation point. The end users. Who's actually using these systems most?
Unsurprisingly, hospitals had the highest revenue share in 2025.
Makes sense. They do a bit of everything.
Exactly. Inpatient, outpatient, wide range of imaging needs for diagnostic, treatment planning, monitoring. They're the core users.
But who is growing fastest in terms of adopting MIS?
That would be the diagnostic imaging centers.
So specialized centers.
Right. Facilities focus purely on providing imaging services. Their growth is being fueled by, well, that rising awareness of chronic diseases we keep mentioning.
Driving more demand for CT, MRI.
Precisely. And these centers are also increasingly adopting things like AI to boost their analysis capabilities.
AI again. We'll come back to that. Any other end users mentioned?
Briefly, ambulatory surgical centers, ASCs, places doing outpatient surgery, they're part of the landscape too.
Okay. Great overview of the segments. So we've talked drivers like chronic illness. What else did the report flag as pushing the market forward?
Well, alongside chronic illness, two other big ones. First, simply the overall increase in healthcare spending globally. More money means more capacity for systems like MIS.
Right, basic economics.
And second, the growing adoption of electronic health records, EHRs. As patient records go digital, having integrated imaging systems like MIS becomes even more critical for that complete patient picture.
So more spending, chronic illness, and digital records all pushing growth. Were there any speed bumps noted? Any restraints?
Yes, a couple of important ones.
Yeah.
Data security and privacy are huge concerns in healthcare, obviously.
Absolutely. Highly sensitive data.
Right, so managing security risks with these interconnected systems can be a challenge and potentially slow down adoption if not handled properly.
And the other?
User training and adoption. You can have the best tech, but if staff aren't trained well, or if integrating it into existing workflows is clumsy, it creates barriers. Change management is key.
That's a crucial point. Tech is only as good as its implementation and users. Okay, what about future trends? What exciting things were on the horizon back then?
Two big ones stood out. One was the advancement in mobile connected MRI scanners.
Mobile MRI, like taking it out to remote locations?
Potentially, yeah.
Hmm.
Or just more flexibility within a facility, offering remote diagnostics, reaching underserved areas. It's a significant development.
Definitely. And the second trend, let me guess, AI.
You got it. The integration of AI-based tools into medical imaging. It promises so much, enhancing image analysis, making workflows more efficient, supporting diagnoses. It's really seen as transformative.
Yeah, AI in medicine is a huge topic itself. Now, who are the companies making all this happen? The competitive landscape.
The report described it as highly competitive. You've got your big global players and also more regional specialists.
Any big names mentioned?
Oh yeah, the usual suspects in healthcare tech. GE Healthcare, Siemens Healthineers, FUG Hologic, Canon Medical Systems, Gavort, Philips,
Okay.
also Carestream Health, Shimadzu Corporation, a mix of major corporations.
Right, a field with some established giants. Did the report highlight any cool, specific innovations from these companies around that time?
Yeah, a few interesting examples. GE Healthcare had announced a research model, SonoSam Track 1, using NVIDIA tech for better object tracking and ultrasound.
Okay.
They also had a simpler version, SonoSam Lite. Canon launched a portable ultrasound, the Ampliomi, designed for versatility.
Portable seems to be a theme.
It does. And Philips released a high-end CT system, the CT3500, aimed at routine work, but also advanced screening. So lots of ongoing development.
Continuous innovation, clearly. Okay, let's try and wrap this up. If you had to boil it down, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive into the 2025 MIS market?
Well, I'd say first, it's a huge market, and it's still growing fast. Second, clear regional differences in North America and Europe leading in size, but APAC leading in growth speed.
Driven mainly by...
Driven mainly by rising chronic illness rates and overall healthcare spending. And third, technology is constantly evolving. Things like AI integration and mobile solutions are really shaping the future path.
Absolutely. And going back to that initial number, over $43 billion in 2025, it makes so much more sense now, understanding all those layers underneath.
Right. It's not just a number. It reflects global health trends, technological shifts.
So a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on after this.
Yeah.
Given everything we've discussed, the growth, the drivers like chronic disease, the rise of AI, mobile tech.
Yeah, the question becomes, what kind of future breakthroughs or even shifts in how healthcare is delivered might you anticipate over the next decade? And maybe just as importantly,
How will things like data security and getting everyone, doctors, patients, comfortable using these new tools? How will those factors shape what actually happens?
exactly. It's not just about the tech. It's about how we integrate it safely and effectively. Definitely something to think about as you watch the healthcare landscape evolve.